So for Jean-Paul Sartre, what is bad faith and what is anguish? Oops. I'm gonna read some point here, but basically, as I've talked about before, bad faith is self-denial, it's self-deception, and there are a lot of different ways in which we can do that. There's a lot of different ways in which we can cause that. Um, so basically, one instance of bad faith is where the for itself, in its incomplete nature, tries to absorb the nature of the in itself, and the in itself has a complete unchanging nature, and the for itself can try to, I guess, take on or absorb that nature, and that relates to the gaze of the other, and that's something I want to talk about later at a different time. But bad faith is where you are in a state of self deception. You are fleeing from yourself. You are running away from that which who you are, and bad faith can, and being in a state of bad faith can rob us of our freedom. It can, basically, we trying to fill ourselves, and we ourselves who are incomplete. We try to fill ourselves with more nothingness, and we have this incomplete nature, and we can do that, and we can create meaning for ourselves correctly or incorrectly. Bad faith is a way that we can create meaning for ourselves incorrectly by taking on the nature or the identity of something other than ourself. Thus, we are fleeing from ourself. The human being is not the only being by whom negations are disclosed in the world. He's also the being who can take negative attitudes towards himself. In our introduction, we define consciousness as a being such that in its being is in question insofar as this being implies that being other than itself. Consciousness is a being, the nature of which is to be conscious of the nothingness of its being. So one also has to understand that there is nothingness a part of its being, and trying to basically make peace with that. Simone de Beauvoir, in her Ethics of Ambiguity, states that one is in bad faith if they don't recognize that their life is ambiguous. And basically, de Beauvoir and Sartre have very similar things, because I mean, she kind of has more of an ethics as to how you can go about living among your ambiguity, but Sartre kind of is a lot about talking about who we are as people and what we should not be doing. He does discuss freedom and what we should be doing in that case, and how we can actualize our inherent freedom. And I do want a video kind of comparing those two. That would be a good video to do, I think. But pretty much bad faith is just that. It's flight from yourself. It's denial of yourself. And if you don't recognize that there is nothingness of yourself, then that is a state of bad faith. And same for de Beauvoir. If you are not acknowledging the fact that there is ambiguity in being and ambiguity in your existence itself, then you are also in a state of bad faith. And according to de Beauvoir, a good happy state of life would be to actualize your freedom by accepting the fact that life itself is inherently ambiguous, and you have to sort of create your own meaning. And Sartre has basically the same thing, but they're both very different in different ways, which I should discuss at some point. So what is anguish, though? Anguish is that of not having any meaning. It comes from basically filling yourself with more and more nothingness. It comes from, it's anguish with Sartre is very similar to dread for Heidegger. Heidegger's Was ist Metaphysic has, I think the word is dread and terror. But that's from, according to Heidegger, that's nothingness wedging itself into your life. and I think de Beauvoir also uses the word anguish. Kierkegaard uses the word despair, and there's words like terror, and there's angst, and there's lots of different translations of different words of the word anguish. And we all know what anguish means. And for Sartre, anguish is when there's more nothingness in your life. If you feel if you feel that certain void that you have in yourself with more and more nothingness, and that filling yourself with more nothingness is through self denial or flight from yourself, bad faith, and that's basically where that comes from. Now, what would be an instance of good faith? That's a very good question. An instance of good faith would be to recognize that there is a part of you that does have characteristics of the in itself, but while recognizing that you are an incomplete, changing person, thus recognizing yourself as the for itself, while also recognizing that you do have some qualities of the in itself. Well, that's different from the person who's basically trying to consume the identity of the in itself and fleeing from their nature as the for itself. And that's an instance of that. Now, Lewis Gordon, I think, he's a really great philosopher that he has written existentialist writings about African Americans, and Corey Anton has made videos about this, where the whole thing is he says in a certain writing, and I've read it before. I don't have it here because that was when I was in school and I read that one, and that book was at the university library, so I don't have that book. But it's by Lewis Gordon, and somewhere in that it says that to have good faith is to recognize that you are, if you are a black person, to recognize that you are black, but recognize that you are different from that and more than that. So he kind of says to someone, don't treat me like I'm black, but also don't forget like I'm black. Don't forget that I'm black. So it's kind of a state of good faith. It's sort of controversial or contradictory, because it's recognizing everything. It's basically actualizing yourself. It's basically recognizing who you are and not trying to actualize some other identity different from yourself, and thus fleeing from yourself. So that's a lot of what that is. And I'll talk more. I'll have 2 more videos beyond this. I'll talk about his idea of freedom and the whole facticity, transcendence sort of thing, and also about the gaze of the other. So let me know what your thoughts are below.